Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Huayi. Coming up in this edition, North Korea once again stepping up its missile tests as tensions rise in the region. We'll look at what's behind the latest barrage. 1 year into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, China has called for peace talks and a ceasefire. So is Beijing seeking to play a greater role in efforts to end the war? We'll speak with an analyst shortly. And koalas are at risk. The beloved symbol of Australia's wildlife has now been listed as an endangered species as bushfires and rural development have threatened their natural habitat. But first, North Korea has been stepping up its missile tests once again in recent days. It says it's doing so in response to military drills by the US and South Korea, which it calls a declaration of war. Earlier this month, leader Kim Jong-un's sister described the Pacific Ocean as North Korea's firing range, with Pyongyang saying it has deadly nuclear counterattack capability in place. Nick Rushworth tells us more.
Yet more missile tests, with North Korean state television saying that Pyongyang is demonstrating that it can conduct a nuclear counterattack against hostile forces. North Korea is coming off a record year in weapons demonstrations, with more than 90 missile tests in 2022, including ones of intercontinental ballistic missiles it says could hit targets as far away as the US mainland. Kim Jong-un's powerful sister has stepped up the rhetoric in recent days, describing the Pacific Ocean as the country's firing range.
It's the first time that North Korea's leadership has directly mentioned the Pacific Ocean. It means there's a high possibility of frequent conflict situations this year between North Korea's advancement of nuclear weapons and South Korea's countermeasures.
Pyongyang is furious at US-South Korea joint exercises, which it sees as a declaration of war, a rehearsal for an invasion. Their springtime Freedom Shield exercise is reported to be set for mid-March. They're mulling deployment of a US nuclear-powered aircraft carrier for the first time since last September. The uptick in tension comes amid the Kremlin's nuclear threats concerning Ukraine, which analysts say is emboldening North Korea.
In the current climate of international tension, it's hard to see China putting pressure on North Korea. And North Korea is apparently a weapons supplier for Russia. This international tension doesn't help towards any resumption of dialogue with Pyongyang.
The UN has called for North Korea to desist in provocative actions. This as North Koreans suffer the impact of years of isolation with deepening food insecurity. Seoul estimates that 3 ballistic missiles is enough to buy food for 2 to 3 million vulnerable people for about 5 months.
1 year since Russia began a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the conflict continues with no end in sight. China claims to have a neutral stance, but has so far refused to call it Russia's invasion and declared unlimited friendship with Moscow. On the first anniversary of the war, the Beijing government announced a 12-point document stating its position and called for peace talks between Ukraine and Russia to achieve a, quote, comprehensive ceasefire. For more on what Beijing is trying to do, let's cross now to Washington to speak with Anna Ashton, the director of China at the US think tank Eurasia Group. Anna, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, first of all, Beijing's 12-point document has turned out to be more of a policy statement rather than a peace plan as previously expected. What is it trying to assert and what's notable about this text?
Well, I think it's notable that it is more of a policy statement rather than a peace plan, because certainly the reports coming out of conversations between China's senior-most diplomat Wang Yi and counterparts at the Munich security conferences indicated that this was going to be a peace plan and that it was going to have some more forceful language in it than what it actually contains, particularly when you look at the points about de-escalating the conflict and the fact that what had been understood was that Wang Yi was going to had said that there was going to be a call for an immediate end to the conflict, with neither side getting any military support from any party right away. That clearly isn't what translated. So it sort of looks like China may have walked this back a little bit.
So toeing the line as it has done so over the past year. Ukraine, though, has cautiously welcomed Beijing's recent gesture that it wants to become a mediator for peace talks. But US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has already expressed skepticism. China abstained from voting on the latest UN resolution calling on Russia to end hostilities and withdraw from Ukraine, as it did in 2 previous votes. So how credible is Beijing's willingness to broker a peace?
Well, it has to be said that China remains an incredibly staunch ally of Russia. It's an increasingly important geostrategic relationship for China, especially when it comes to countering U.S.-led Western hegemony, as China and Russia both see it. So it's not coming from a position of neutrality. And we know that Xi Jinping has not been speaking with Zelensky throughout the course of this conflict, while he has spoken with Putin. So it's not really credible for China to present itself as a broker of a peace deal, because that would require conveying a greater degree of neutrality, soliciting views and priorities of both sides, being a go-between. But China can offer its sentiments about the harm that the war is causing and contributing factors that China believes should be prioritized and addressed. And I think regardless of what China calls it, that's the right way to think about this document.
Now, the conflict has also exposed limitations in the UN Security Council, with Russia having veto power. What lessons has the West learned from the stalemate when concern also mount over a potential military invasion of Taiwan by China?
Well, I think that this is part of a broader trend in the current geopolitical environment of the existing international institutions seeming poorly equipped to deal with today's realities. They oftentimes don't reflect unity because there isn't unity within the international community between major world powers or between developed countries and less developed countries. And that's problematic. And I think it's led to a proliferation of multilateral agreements, both security and trade related, because of the fact that the existing institutions just aren't functioning the way that they need to. When it comes to what it means for any potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan, I'm not sure it really matters, just because, the United States has been quite clear with China that if China were to launch an unprecedented attack, the United States would defend Taiwan. So one way or another, I think we can expect that that's what would happen.
Anna Ashton, Director of China at Eurasia Group, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you too, Yuka.
And finally, when you think of Australia, you think of koalas, but this could change. The beloved symbol of wildlife down under is now on the country's endangered species list, as recent wildfires exacerbated the animal's already declining population. This report from Lauren Bain and our colleagues at France Télévisions.
Koalas, the beloved Australian icon, are under threat. In 2022, the animal was officially placed on the endangered list in Queensland, New South Wales, and the Canberra region.
Well, it looks like there's a mother and a baby, and the baby's probably about 15 months old, so it's not on its mum's back anymore, but it's staying close to mum.
The Australian Koala Foundation estimates a 30% decline in this species since 2018.
We have destroyed 80% of their habitat. The remaining koala habitat is 20% of our continent, and that is under enormous pressure from agriculture, from coal mining, from road building, and so we are starting to run out.
The 2019-2020 bushfires burned 12.6 million hectares of land. More than 61,000 koalas were in the path of the flames. The foundation estimates a few tens of thousands remain today, and only 20% of koalas' natural habitats still exist. In the southwest of Sydney, the suburb of Campbelltown surrounds this eucalyptus forest. This is where one of the few healthy koala populations live. But their home is threatened by increasing urban development. This group is trying to protect koala habitats.
The most important thing about keeping a koala population healthy is that they can expand and they don't become overcrowded. If they become overcrowded, they get stressed, they catch kidney disease, leukemia, and chlamydia.
Chlamydia, a sexually transmitted disease, is spreading quickly among the animals. In 2008, about 10% of the population was infected. Today, 8 out of 10 are infected.
Good morning, sweet pea. Hello, my darling. Hi. All right, well, you've eaten really nicely. Chlamydia, a bacterial infection that can affect the eyes, the conjunctiva. It also affects the reproductive system for females and the bladder. So these guys, female-wise, can get rendered infertile.
This hospital is dedicated to the healing and rehabilitation of sick or injured koalas. This female is undergoing a medical exam. She's given full attention as she's still capable of reproducing.
So while she's under, of course, we're just checking everything else.
Once receiving a clean bill of health, she'll return to the wild, where she'll hopefully have babies of her own.
This animal is what we'd call high conservation value. She's young, she's undiseased, she's can breed. It's a much better chance to increase the population of koalas.
Of the 100 koalas that have been treated at this hospital, 55 have returned to the wild.
That's it for this edition of Access Asia. Please do stay tuned for more world news coming up here on France 24.